Have you ever wanted something so badly you stopped asking whether it was actually good for you? More money, more recognition, something you saw someone else have, something that made you feel good in the moment? Proverbs 23 teaches us something important. Wisdom doesn't only help us to make better decisions, wisdom teaches us how to manage our desires. Because everything we can pursue doesn't deserve our pursuit. Everything we want doesn't need to control us. And everything that looks valuable isn't worth the price it may eventually cost us. So today we're asking, what has my attention? And is it leading me towards the life God is teaching me to build? Welcome back to Rebuilding with Saudia Lynn, where we're learning how to think biblically so we can live wisely. Today, we're continuing our journey through Proverbs with chapter 23. Yesterday in Proverbs 22, we learned to build a life worth more than money. We learned that a good name is worth protecting. Wisdom recognizes danger. Generosity matters. Debt deserves careful consideration. Boundaries should be respected, and we should develop our skills before the opportunity arrives. Today, Proverbs 23 takes us deeper into the desires behind our decisions. This chapter talks about appetite, money, discipline, comparison, envy, correction, parenting, alcohol, self-control, and where we allow our hearts to go. And there's a lesson connected so much of it. If you don't learn to manage your desires can begin managing you. Sometimes the problem isn't that something is automatically bad. The problem is that we have allowed it to become too important. We chase it. We obsess over it. We overspend for it. We compare ourselves because of it. Or we keep reaching for something that gives temporary satisfaction while creating long-term consequences. So as we study Proverbs 23, I want us to keep asking, am I controlling my desires or are my desires controlling my decisions? Let's get into it. Part 1. Don't let appetite make your decisions. Verses 1 through 3. When you sit to dine with a ruler, note well what is before you, and put a knife to your throat if you are given to gluttony. Do not crave his delicacies, for that food is deceptive. So verse 2 gives us strong imagery about controlling our appetite. And verse 3 warns, do not crave his delicacies, for that food is deceptive. Solomon is teaching us about restraint. There will be moments when something attractive is placed in front of us, and wisdom asks us not to immediately reach for everything we want. That principle goes far beyond food. Sometimes we need restraint with spending, with attention, with entertainment, with relationships, with opportunities, with our emotions, with the things we consume. One of the signs of maturity is learning that desire does not automatically require action. So how do we live this out? Before immediately satisfying a desire, ask, why do I want this? And then, what happens after I get it? Sometimes slowing down long enough to answer those two questions can completely change a decision. You don't have to deny yourself everything, but you do need enough self-control to decide what deserves a yes. Part 2. Don't exhaust yourself chasing money. Verses 4 through 5. Do not wear yourself out to get rich. Do not trust your own cleverness. Cast but a glance at riches, and they are gone, for they will surely sprout wings and fly off to the sky like an eagle. So verse 4 says, do not wear yourself out to get rich. Do not trust your own cleverness. Then verse 5 gives us a picture of wealth. Cast but a glance at riches, and they are gone. Solomon isn't teaching us not to work. Proverbs has repeatedly taught us diligence, work, preparation, responsibility, financial wisdom. But there's a difference between working responsibly and allowing money to consume your life. Money is useful. Money can provide. Money can create opportunities. Money can help us care for our families and help other people. But money makes a terrible master. If your entire identity becomes connected to getting more, there will always be another amount that feels like enough. So how do we live this out? Work towards your financial goals. Build, save, learn, increase your skills, create opportunities, but periodically ask yourself, what am I sacrificing to get more? If gaining money is costing your integrity, peace, relationship with God, health, or the people you love, wisdom may be telling you to reevaluate how you're building. Build wealth if God gives you the opportunity. Just don't let wealth build your identity. Part 3. Be careful where you invest your wisdom. Verses 6 through 9. Do not eat the food of a begrudging host. Do not crave his delicacies, for he is the kind of person who is always thinking about the cost. Eat and drink, he says to you, but his heart is not with you. You will vomit up the little you have eaten and will have wasted your compliments. Do not speak to fools, for they will scorn your prudent words. So verse 9 says, do not speak to fools, for they will scorn your prudent words. This is an interesting lesson. Throughout Proverbs, we're encouraged to share wisdom, but here, Solomon reminds us that not everyone wants it. Sometimes we exhaust ourselves trying to convince someone who has already decided they don't want to listen. We explain again, we argue, we send another message, we give another example, we try to make them understand. But wisdom also recognizes when a conversation is no longer productive. How do we live this out? Learn the difference between someone who doesn't understand and someone who doesn't want to understand. The first person may need patience. The second situation may require a boundary. You can offer wisdom. You can explain yourself. You can communicate honestly, but you cannot force another person to value what they have already decided to reject. Sometimes wisdom knows when to stop talking. Part 4. Character matters even when you have the advantage. Verse 10 through 11. Do not move an ancient boundary stone or encroach on the fields of the fatherless, for their defender is strong. He will take up their case against you. Verse 10 says, do not move an ancient boundary stone or encroach on the fields of the fatherless. We saw the same warning about boundary stones yesterday in Proverbs 22, but this time Solomon specifically mentions the fatherless. Why is that important? Because he's talking about people who may be vulnerable. Someone might have the ability to take advantage of them because they don't have the same protection or power. But verse 11 says, for their defender is strong. He will take up their case against you. God cares about how we treat people when we have the advantage. So how do we live this out? Don't measure integrity by what you can get away with. If somebody doesn't understand something, don't use their lack of knowledge against them. If you have more authority, don't misuse it. If someone trusts you, don't exploit that trust. Character becomes especially visible when you could take advantage of someone and choose not to. Part 5. Correction is part of growth. Verses 12 through 16. Apply your heart to instruction and your ears to words of knowledge. Do not withhold discipline from a child. If you punish them with a rod, they will not die. Punish them with a rod and save them from death. My son, if your heart is wise, then my heart will be glad indeed. My inmost being will rejoice when your lips speak what is right. So verse 12 says, apply your heart to instruction and your ears to words of knowledge. There's that lesson again. Listen, learn, remain teachable. Throughout our journey through Proverbs, Solomon keeps returning to correction because wise people never reach a point where they have nothing left to learn. Then these verses turn towards parents, teaching and correcting their children. The goal of biblical discipline isn't simply punishment, it's instruction. It's helping someone develop wisdom before foolish decisions become destructive patterns. And verse 15 says, my son, if your heart is wise, then my heart will be glad indeed. There's joy in seeing wisdom develop. So how do we live this out? Don't only correct mistakes, teach the wisdom behind the correction. And when you are corrected, ask, what can I learn from this? You don't have to agree with every criticism you receive, but remain teachable enough to examine whether there is something useful in it. Correction handled wisely can become preparation. Part 6. Don't let comparison make you envious. Verses 17 and 18. Do not let your heart envy sinners, but always be zealous for the fear of the Lord. There is surely a future hope for you, and your hope will not be cut off. So verse 17 says, do not let your heart envy sinners, but always be zealous for the fear of the Lord. Then verse 18 says, there is surely a future hope for you, and your hope will not be cut off. That is powerful, because comparison becomes especially tempting when someone else appears to be getting results faster than you. You're trying to do things wisely, and somebody else seems to be getting ahead without the same discipline. You're saving, they're spending, you're preparing. They seem to get the opportunity immediately. You're trying to walk with God, and somebody who isn't concerned about God seems to be prospering. Solomon says, don't envy them. Why? Because you cannot judge an entire life from one visible moment. So how do we live this out? When comparison begins making you question your progress, return your attention to your own assignment. Ask, what is God teaching me to build right now? You don't need someone else's timeline. You don't need their opportunity. You don't need their life. Stay faithful with yours. There is still hope for your future. Part 7. Pay attention to what is beginning to control you. Verses 19 through 21. Listen, my son, and be wise, and set your heart on the right path. Do not join those who drink too much wine or gorge themselves on meat, for drunkards and gluttons become poor, and drowsiness clothes them in rags. So verse 19 says, listen, my son, and be wise, and set your heart on the right path. Then Solomon warns about drunkenness and gluttony. Again, the issue isn't uncontrolled appetite. Something that begins as enjoyment can become destructive when we lose the ability to govern it wisely. And this principle can help us examine more than alcohol or food. Ask yourself, is there anything in my life that I'm having difficulty saying no to? Spending, scrolling, attention, a person, food, alcohol, entertainment, an emotional reaction. Whatever it is, wisdom pays attention when a desire begins becoming a demand. So how do we live this out? Practice saying no before you absolutely have to. Create limits. Recognize triggers. Remove unnecessary temptation. Ask for help when something is becoming difficult to manage. Self-control isn't about proving how strong you are. Sometimes self-control means becoming wise enough not to keep putting yourself in situations where you repeatedly make poor decisions. Part 8. Value wisdom enough to keep it. Verses 22 through 25. Listen to your father, who gave you life, and do not despise your mother when she is old. Buy the truth and do not sell it. Wisdom, instruction, and insight as well. The father of a righteous child has great joy. A man who fathers a wise son rejoices in him. May your father and mother rejoice. May she who gave you birth be joyful. So verse 23 says, buy the truth and do not sell it. Wisdom, instruction, and insight as well. I love that language. Buy the truth and don't sell it. In other words, value wisdom. Once God teaches you something, don't casually trade that wisdom away because foolishness becomes attractive again. You've already learned what that decision produces. You've already learned what that habit costs. You've already learned why that boundary matters. Don't keep selling wisdom you've already paid to learn. So how do we live this out? Think about something life has already taught you. Maybe you learned to budget. Maybe you learned to slow down before responding emotionally. Maybe you learned to recognize a warning sign. Maybe you learned to establish boundaries. Maybe you learned not to make decisions while desperate. Don't abandon the lesson simply because you're in a different situation. Keep the wisdom. Part 9. Guard where your heart goes. Verses 26 through 35. My son, give me your heart and let your eyes delight in my ways. For an adulterous woman is a deep pit, and a wayward wife is a narrow well. Like a bandit, she lies in wait and multiplies the unfaithful among men. Who has woe? Who has sorrow? Who has strife? Who has complaints? Who has needless bruises? Who has bloodshot eyes? Those who linger over wine, who go to sample bowls of mixed wine. Do not gaze at wine when it is red, when it sparkles in the cup, when it goes down smoothly. In the end, it bites like a snake and poisons like a viper. Your eyes will see strange sights, and your mind will imagine confusing things. You will be like one sleeping on the high seas, lying on top of the rigging. They hit me, you will say, but I'm not hurt. They beat me, but I don't feel it. When will I wake up so I can find another drink? So verse 26 says, my son, give me your heart and let your eyes delight in my ways. That word heart should sound familiar. Back in Proverbs 4, we learned, guard your heart, because everything you do flows from it. Now Solomon tells his son, give me your heart. Pay attention to what captures your affection, because what captures your heart eventually influences your decisions. The final verses of Proverbs 23 return strongly to alcohol and the consequences of allowing it to control us. Verse 29 asks, who has woe? Who has sorrow? Who has strife? Who has complaints? And Solomon describes the consequences that can follow intoxication. Then the chapter ends with a person waking up and wanting another drink. This is a picture of something having gained control. The consequences happen, the pain happened, the trouble happened, and yet the desire remains. That is why wisdom tells us to pay attention before a pattern becomes a prison. So how do we live this out? Don't only ask, is this wrong? Sometimes ask, where could this lead if I stop controlling it? And is this helping me become the person God is teaching me to become? Guard your heart before your desires begin directing your life. What Proverbs 23 teaches us about God. Proverbs 23 shows us that God cares about what controls our hearts. He teaches us restraint so our appetites don't make our decisions. He gives us financial wisdom so money doesn't become our master. He teaches us when to speak and when continuing to argue is no longer productive. He defends people who are vulnerable. He gives us correction because he wants us to grow. He teaches us not to envy someone else's path. He gives us hope for our future. He teaches us self-control. He tells us to value truth, wisdom, instruction, and understanding. And he warns us about desires that can slowly begin controlling us. God isn't trying to remove every enjoyable thing from our lives. He's teaching us how to enjoy what is good without becoming controlled by it. Key takeaways. Number 1, manage your desires. Wanting something doesn't automatically mean you should pursue it. Number 2, don't make money your master. Work diligently without allowing wealth to consume your identity. Number 3, know when to stop arguing. Not everyone is willing to receive wisdom. Number 4, protect vulnerable people. Integrity matters, especially when you have the advantage. Number 5, remain teachable. Correction can become preparation for your future. Number 6, stop comparing timelines. Someone else's visible success doesn't determine what God is doing in your life. Number 7, pay attention to what controls you. Create boundaries before a desire becomes destructive. And number 8, keep the wisdom you've gained. Don't return to patterns God has already taught you how to recognize. Memory verse, Proverbs chapter 23, verses 17 through 18. Do not let your heart envy sinners, but always be zealous for the fear of the Lord. There is surely a future hope for you, and your hope will not be cut off. You don't have to chase somebody else's life. You don't have to panic because someone appears further ahead. And you don't have to compromise wisdom because you're impatient for results. There is still hope for your future. Stay faithful with what God is teaching you today. Think about the things that have been receiving most of your attention lately: your money, your goals, your phone, a relationship, your career, your business, other people's lives, something you're trying to obtain, or something you turn to when you're stressed. Now ask, is anything beginning to have more control over me than it should? Is comparison affecting your peace? Is impatience affecting your financial decisions? Is an appetite becoming difficult to manage? Are you returning to something wisdom already taught you to leave alone? Or are you exhausting yourself chasing something you believe you need in order to feel successful? Choose one area, then ask, what would self-control and wisdom look like here today? Practice that. Close in prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for giving us wisdom that teaches us how to manage our desires instead of allowing our desires to manage us. Help us develop self-control in every area of our lives. Teach us to recognize when something that may appear harmless is beginning to have too much influence over our decisions. Give us wisdom with money. Help us work diligently, prepare responsibly, and build wisely without allowing wealth or success to become our identity. Teach us when to speak and when to stop trying to convince people who do not want to receive wisdom. Keep us people of integrity who never take advantage of someone simply because we have the ability to do so. Give us teachable hearts. Help us receive correction, instruction, and knowledge that can prepare us for our future. Father, protect us from comparison. When someone else's life appears to be moving faster than ours, remind us that there is still hope for our future. Help us remain faithful to the path you have given us. Give us wisdom to recognize anything that is beginning to control us. Strengthen our boundaries. Strengthen our discipline. Strengthen our ability to say no when saying no protects what you're building in us. And help us hold on to the wisdom you've already taught us as we continue rebuilding, rebuild our desires, rebuild our discipline, rebuild our financial habits, rebuild our boundaries, rebuild our thinking, rebuild our hearts, and teach us to desire what leads us closer to the people you are calling us to become. In Jesus' name, amen. Remember, you don't have to have everything you see. You don't have to chase everything that looks successful. You don't have to spend everything you have. You don't have to respond to every desire. And you don't have to compare your rebuilding season with somebody else's harvest. Learn to manage what has your attention. Protect your heart. Keep the wisdom you've gained. Practice self-control and stay focused on what God is developing in you. Because real success isn't simply having more, it's becoming wise enough not to lose yourself while you're building it. This is Rebuilding with Saudia Lynn, and I'll see you in Proverbs chapter 24.